there, Matt. I see your text. See, I found this other day. Coincidentally applicable to the class.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with Humble Bundle, but they put deals together for charities, for like games and things like that. But I've been following them for books for quite a while. And it's a whole group of books on JavaScript, React. Let's see, React, PHP, TypeScript, HTML,
nice.
Angular, all that stuff. So all those books for $18.
Only $18. Oh wow, that's a really good deal.
But don't know whether it's worth sharing with the class or not. If
Yeah, I'll go ahead and show this with the class. It looks good. It's not a scam website or anything, right?
I bought tons and tons and tons.
Okay, good.
Books from them. Yeah, okay. But you can click bundles. And if you click books, you can see some of the other. Those are the games, but if you click books, you can see, like, if you scroll down a little bit, I think I picked up the math and mechanics one for mechatronics and some other things along those lines. But like the run and those kind of things. So they're O'Reilly's a great. Some of those books are pretty good.
And you can also get them in EPUB format as well.
They don't always have all the versions, but you can kind of look at it. Usually they have EPUB and PDF. I have a Kindle, and most of the stuff I have is in Mobi, but I end up tossing most of it into Calibre anyway for conversion. But yeah, I mean, Humble's pretty, I guess, to some level well known. But yeah, a lot of games, but they also have software. Software is not as good, but I know the books are potentially.
It's a good
not bad
resource for sure. Yeah.
But like programming Mega Bundle, it'll touch on, some of the Python,
C++, Python, data structure algorithms. Nice.
And you can modify the donation adjustments as well if you want to donate more to whatever. On the right, you can see the charities they're donating to. I think the web app one's Girls in Programming or something like that. But you can modify the percentage of what you're actually paying for them. This one was coincidental in that you're talking about starting one of the topics. Which one was it? Angular today.
Yeah.
There's a book in there on that.
There's a book on Angular on here.
Not in there, in the other one that I sent you the original link.
Oh yeah, the original link.
Yep.
Let's see. Here it is. Angular up and running. I wonder if this is covering Angular 1 or Angular 2. Oh, Angular 2. There we go.
Yeah, I've gotten multiple versions of a lot of the books they push through, but I mean, most of these books are probably $18 or something there about alone.
That's a good deal for this many books.
And like,
can you like select the books, or does it come in like these?
You can see at the very top it says pay at least $18 for these 14. You can click 10-item bundle or 5-item bundle, and that gives the difference things. I mean, for $18, I usually pick up the larger quantity anyway. But
that's really cheap. Yeah.
So $10 for those, and they cycle through every so often. The data visualization stuff is one of the ones that I'm kind of curious about. And then I think in one of the other ones, it was talking about JavaScript use in robotics. So I'm kind of poking around in that one as well.
Nice. Good stuff.
But anyway, I thought I mentioned it when I came across it yesterday. Yeah, that's what it's being donated towards. So, and you can, the drop-down menu above that, you can make the adjustment to the donation. So normally the default is more towards the company donating and Humble Bundle keeping them up and running, but you can modify the donation amount of whatever you're paying pretty.
Yeah, so you can adjust that.
Yeah, in there. So custom amount, and it lets sliders go.
Interesting. But interesting. Yeah, I haven't seen this website before. But it looks pretty cool.
Not a scam.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway,
All right. Yeah.
all right.
Thanks for sharing that, Matt. I'll go ahead and share it with the
Yeah, no
share it
worries.
with the class. I'll send it in the chat in the Zoom. So it should be there. Or yeah, actually let me do that. That way they get the full URL here. Let's see here to everyone. Okay. Right. Good stuff. Thank you for sharing that. Oh, looks like someone else. Site Oracle also used their service in the past. Good stuff. All right. How's everyone doing? Looking forward to the end of the semester. We're not that far away. We'll be there before we know it, I'm sure. Yeah, it does. It really goes by quick. Each year I teach, it seems like it goes by faster and faster. And when I was in school and I was taking classes, it seemed like it just went by really slow. So time is a really is a really strange thing. All right, so let's get started here. It's 6:06. Welcome everyone. We are going to start module 11 this week. And this is the last component of the main stack, which is AngularJS. We are pretty much done with the server-side components of the main stack. So we're not going to be doing anything more on the server. That is where we are now. What we're going to do today is I'm going to go over the final project, just go over it really quickly. And after that, I'll see if you have any questions. And then we'll get started on AngularJS. So let's go over the two options for the final project. I'm assuming you went over those two options. So let's go over them now. Okay, so option number one is the default one, I guess we could say. So this is just the final project for the class. If you don't want to do your own thing, you can go ahead and choose this option. So for this, you'll be creating a public wiki application. So if you're familiar with Wikipedia, where you could submit information and then people can search for that information, pull it up. That's going to be the idea behind this. It's not going to be as complex and extensive as that, but it'll have the common CRUD sort of operations when it comes to some application like this. So we need to be able to create a new wiki. We need to be able to read an existing one. We need to be able to update an existing wiki, and we need to be able to delete an existing wiki. So that's going to be the idea. I'm going to give you the client side more or less, at least the HTML, CSS, images, and design. So that you'll get here. But then you'll have to add your own server-side, server-side web APIs, and all the client-side stuff as well. If you want to fork over this starter project, the link for it is right over here. We'll go over that link in a bit here. I'm not going to go over these views just yet, because this has to do with what we're going to be learning today and next week. So I'll come back to this probably next week or the week after, and it'll make a lot more sense what these mean here. But essentially, we can say like this is at one page. So we can say this is the home page. This is the display page. This is where we add or make a change to an existing page. And that's it. Authentication is not required. However, if you were to use this in a production environment, you will need to incorporate some sort of authentication here. However, if you do decide to incorporate authentication, you'll receive an extra 10 points or 10% extra credit on this. But what I would do here is I would make sure the application works without the authentication component to start with, and then if you have time, then you can go ahead and attempt at it. So I give you some information here as far as your database. So you'll pretty much have one collection here for this application. If you decide to implement authentication, you'll have at least two. So, but if you don't do the authentication, you should just end up with a single collection. And I tell you the fields for your collection here. So these are the fields. And this notes column here will tell you if the field should be required. And some other stuff here. These are the views. Like I said, we haven't gone over what views are yet, so these might not make too much sense to you. But there's going to be 3 views. And when it comes to grading will be on a 100-point scale. The home page or the search view will be to 25%. The display view will be the other 25%, and the post edit view, this is what you use to create a new wiki or make a change to an existing one, will be 50%. And you also have 2 extra credit opportunities. Like I said, 10% if you decide to implement authentication, and 10% if you present your application on the day of the final. And your application does not have to be complete to do this. So you can still receive 10% extra credit as long as you go over it. And you show us what you have got done so far, what you still need to do, anything you got stuck on, how you got unstuck, so on and so forth. So we'll go over that. And like I said, the starter template you can get from this link here. So go ahead and work this project, and you'll have the client, not the full client side, but you'll have the at least the design, the CSS, and the view. So if you run the application, you should get, I need to make it, okay, so it does load in a new tab, but it doesn't load correctly in this window. Actually, I'm going to ask you to not fork this project yet until I fix this here. So please don't fork this yet. Once I get this fixed, then I'll ask you to do that. I need to make a change to view of the links in the views, I believe. That's what's going on there. Or perhaps in the CSS file. Yeah, I need to see what's going on here. Okay. All right, so we're going to end about 2 weeks before Ino's week. So I believe AngularJS we're going to cover for the next 3 weeks. Let's take a look. So we're going to be covering module 12 next week, module 13 the week after, and application deployment, which is very short. It's going to be module 13. So we're going to have 1 week that what I'll be doing is I'll be here and we'll meet and I'll answer any questions on the final project that you have during this module 15 here. I'll also give you sort of a head start on what you need to sort of do as far as your web APIs. So we'll do that. I have some notes for you here, which I'll go over, and that will help you. Okay, so that's going to be the first option if you decide to do that route. Let's go over option number 2. So with this option, if you've ever sort of had an idea to create an application and what you've learned in this class you feel is enough for you to sort of make that happen, this is a good opportunity for you to sort of try to attempt it, or perhaps not the full idea that you had, but maybe just a slimmed down, a very, very slimmed down version of that application that you've had in mind. You can go ahead and make a proposal. And once the proposal is accepted, then you can go ahead and get started on it. Just keep in mind, like I said, that you don't have much time. So, you know, what you propose, you know, take into account about like 5 weeks or so. Okay, so it's not going to be something, you know, very, very involved. So like I said, if you do have an idea of something really involved, just make a slimmed down version of that, and that should be fine. If you do decide to go with option 2, please submit your proposal as soon as you can, because you can't start on it before I give you the approval. So, what that proposal should include is just a short little description of what the application is, and some sketches. So make like a rough sketch of sort of how you want the application to look and whatnot. The important thing here is that there should be utility for the application. So it must be used for something. So it can't just be, you know, just some, you know, just a concept kind of thing. It has to actually do something. And it also must incorporate these items below. So it must be a single page application. It must use Node.js with Express. It must use MongoDB for storage, and it must use AngularJS for the front end. And then, like I said, the project must be pre-approved. And let's see, it's also on a 100-point scale. And if you decide to do a presentation on it during finals week, it'll be 20 points. Right, and the final is going to be due at the end of finals week, so on December 18th at midnight. I believe that falls on a Sunday evening. Yeah. Okay. Are there any questions on these two options? You have your hand raised, Marco. Go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question as far as like utility. Does it have to be like something anybody can use, or can it be like a niche focus for utility?
It can be a niche focus, yeah. So that doesn't mean that it has to be something that, you know, a wide array of people can use. It just means that it must be something practical, right? Something you could use, you know.
I have a question.
Cool.
Did you have anything else to say, Arco?
Nope, no, that's it. Thank
Okay,
you.
yeah. Roger, yes.
Do you think we have enough time to write a mini Twitter app using that WebSockets, the extra credit, which I did not do? Do you think that's
Twitter application?
yeah?
I think that's pretty reasonable. Yeah. I mean, it's not going to be as extensive as something like that, but a very slimmed down version of it, I think you could do.
Would you
However, WebSockets, though, I don't know if Twitter is a good candidate for WebSockets. I know they have it where if there are new tweets, they automatically come up on your screen. I guess you can say, you know, you could use WebSockets for that.
But what would you suggest? If not, just what we're gonna do? AngularJS, would you suggest that?
You mean WebSockets?
No, I mean, I thought I heard that you said WebSockets priority will not be good for a Twitter app. So do we use AngularJS?
Oh, no. You would use, I believe, I mean, you can use it. Okay. I'm not saying you can't use WebSockets for it. However, it's not, to me, it's not a real-time application, right? So it's not like a chat application.
Okay, I get it.
It's not like a stock application where the information is being just displayed all the time, you know?
Okay.
It's more of a forum kind of thing, right? You make a tweet and then you refresh and you get the updates kind of thing. So, I mean, it can still be used for it. You know, I'm not saying it can't be used for something like that, but it's not really a real-time application. You know what I mean?
So is there a time in the schedule for you to go over all these other types of frameworks that are out there, whether it's Vue.js or Meteor or is that beyond the scope?
No, it's beyond the scope of this class. Yeah. You know, if you do want to do that, you know, idea with WebSockets for a Twitter-like application, I will, you know, approve that. So don't think that you know, something like that It won't be approved.
I haven't even looked at
Okay.
anything set, so.
Yep.
I tend to aim too high, so most likely I would
That's
just
good.
do the standard.
That's
Aim
good.
too high and I get
Aim-
stuck.
All right. Are there any other questions on the final? All right, so let's get started on AngularJS single page applications. All right, so we're going to go over a presentation first, and then we will jump to examples. So introduction. So far, all client-side development has been done using jQuery, and all DOM manipulation has been done manually, from setting and getting values to appending HTML into the DOM. This method of development poses a few issues that make it less than ideal. So for example, if we embed HTML inside of your script, it breaks all separation of concern rules that state that each area of development should not include other concerns that are not out of that part of that. Yeah. And this is, for example, this is why we no longer include inline CSS into our HTML tags. Also, manual DOM manipulation is very error prone. It lacks flexibility and maintainability. Since you have HTML in both the HTML document as well as embedded inside your script, it makes change it. A change will often involve locating all the script files, and may contain HTML. And thankfully, at this point in time, we have client-side application design frameworks that aim to solve these problems. But before we get there, we need to first learn about a couple of abstract concepts. Single SPAs, or single page applications, are web applications that aim to mimic traditional desktop applications. They do this by attempting to load all necessary resources when the application initially loads. Then after that, we use AJAX for all communication with the web server. This provides a fast, seamless user experience that is not very different from a installable desktop application. It also has advantages over a traditional desktop application, since updates are done on the web server and automatically get pushed to your clients the next time they access your application. They are also device independent, since they run in a web browser. The disadvantages are that you must use legacy web technologies that were never really intended to be used for such purpose, and they are built upon existing frameworks that provide fixes, hacks, and added functionality that are themselves built on hacks. So generally speaking, HTML is a poor foundation for building interactive applications, which is the reason why we have client-side frameworks that help to sort of bridge that gap that we have here. Unlike a server-side web technology such as PHP or ASP.NET and Java that dynamically build the HTML page on the server before sending it to the client, SPAs do all the heavy lifting on the client, and the server is primarily used to expose web APIs, for the transfer of data. Since the server no longer serves as a dynamic HTML engine, we actually get modularized applications that allow multiple versions of the client to be built independently of the server. So in other words, we can use the same APIs in a web application as we can in a mobile application as we can in an embedded chip. So let's take a look at the life cycle between a traditional web server side application versus a single page application. So here on the left, we have a traditional web application where the client makes an initial request to the server. We get an HTML file in return. The client displays that HTML. And when the client does some, make some, what is it? Let's say they fill out a form and submit the form. We submit just that information. So we submit the form information to the server, and the server gives back a whole HTML page again. Okay, so we get back the entire HTML page. The problem with this is that we need to keep state. So what ends up happening here is that state is usually stored in the HTML page and sent to the server each time. So that same state can then be returned back to the client, and that state can be used to sort of restore what the page was before a submit occurred. And that's because we are going to get back the entire page each time we submit. Right? So state has to be sent from the client to the server, and then from the server to the client each time, right? And this state could be small, or it depends on the page. It could be really huge. So if you have a lot of state information, all that state needs to be sent over every single time. So that's not ideal. In a single page application, here on the right, again, we have the initial request. We get an HTML page back, exactly like we have here. However, this request sends all the information that the client will need, which means all the HTML that goes with that application, all images, whatever this client needs is going to be sent with this one request. And then the client is going to load that application. And from that point forward, if we need to send information to the server, we make AJAX requests, right? So we send data and we receive data. Right here, we are receiving HTML. In this case, we are receiving data. And this data is then used by the client to display. Okay, you may not know it, but we use a more and more single page application today than ever before. So if you've ever used Gmail, Google Drive, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Uber, these are all considered single page applications. There are a few application design frameworks out there that help make development of SPAs easier. We have Angular JS version 1, Angular JS version 2. We have React JS, we have Vue JS, Backbone JS, Ember JS, and the list goes on. Okay, MVC. So MVC, short for Model View Controller, is a design pattern that provides a framework to achieve separation of concerns between the presentation, which we call the view, right? The presentation is what we call the view, the data, which we call the model, and the logic that controls the model and the view, which we call the control. Okay, so this you have to get that here. So make sure you understand the view is the presentation, the model is ADA, and the controller is the object. Right. Traditionally, the MVC design pattern was used on server-side applications, but has since been achievable on the client as well. And most modern client-side frameworks you utilize the MVC pattern or variations of it to some extent. Variations to the MVC pattern exist to aim to add additional functionality or richness, and such as the MVVM, which is the model view model, and we'll go over what that means. So for example, AngularJS is known to use the MVVM as opposed to the pure MVC. And it's important to understand the differences between those two. So let's take a look to see what they are. Okay. MVVM still contains a controller, even though it's in its name. This is poor, the way they named it is quite poor. It should really be MVCVM. That's what I would call it, or maybe MVMC or something like that. But it still has a controller. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. The idea behind MVVM is the concept that the presentation elements should be connected or bound to its data, whereby an update in the presentation elements affects the data, and the update in the data affects the presentation elements. And we call this data binding. The controller interacts with auto, not the view. So the controller interacts with the model, not the view. That's really important here. This one line here. The view is then automatically updated. So in other words, when the data, when the data changes, the presentation is automatically changed as well. We can think of it as if the presentation layer is glued to its data. Let's take a look at a few diagrams that aim to show this concept. And this is around here. So this is what we have been doing so far. We have a user here that interacts with a web page. So this is the page, this is the user, right? And this is step one. So the user makes some interaction with the page that causes an event, right? So we handle that event here. The part that we want to avoid, or the part that we sort of dread, is this part here, where we have to make changes to the page, right? And this involves all the stuff, creating new elements, appending stuff, making sure things are in the correct format, all that stuff, right? So this is what the client side frameworks aim to solve this part here. Okay, and now we will compare this to the MVVM, which is this here. And what I want to start out here is I want you to just focus on this part here for now. So I make a square around it. So just this part here, if the user again makes an interaction with the view, what we can do is we can glue the form fields, right, that is in this view to some object, and we call that object the model. If the user makes any change to this input, this object is automatically changed as well. So that's going in this direction, right? So if the view is changed, it updates update auto, and it works in the reverse way as well. So if we update this object, the presentation changes. Right? So when the user puts in some information in this form, we already have an object that holds all that information. So once the user does this, they cause an event to occur. Again, the event is handled here, right? The controller does not work with the presentation, right? It does not do that. The controller works with the data, right? So the controller can read this, or it can make a change to this. And when it does, it automatically updates the view, right? So the view is automatically changed when this thing is changed, and the controller will work with this only, right? If we go back to what we saw here, right, that was not the case. Here we are. This is our code. We are going to work directly with the page, right? We're going to create elements, put things in those elements, append those there, so on, and so forth, right? And if we take a look at the next slide, right? Here we are not doing that, right? Here, the controller or the actual code is going to work with the data, which means that before we get this going, we have to do something in the view to make it connect to this, right? There's something we have to do here before all this will that's before the controller can work with this. We have to set this up, right? So that's what we're going to be you're going to be seeing in a bit here. Okay, so this is an example of of login form. So the user puts in their username and password here, and as soon as they put their username and password without any code at all, the front end client framework will automatically put this information in this object here, right? And I mean immediately, as soon as the user, for example, types this 3, the 3 will be here. Okay, so there's really no time that it takes for this to happen. So when a event occurs, we already have this information, right? Which means that we don't need to do, get element by ID, read what's in these forms. That information is already in this object. So we can just read this object. And at the exact same time, if the controller were to change this, for example, this will automatically change as well, right? So it goes in two directions. Okay, the key to understanding the client side MVVM pattern is to understand the dynamic nature of the view model relationship, or the glue that holds them together. The model and view are automatically kept in sync without us having to do anything. The model and view are continual auditor for a change. If a change is detected in one, the other is automatic updated to reflect the change. This results in an always up-to-date model that the controller can access for reading and updating, right? So no DOM element retrieval. One catch is when you utilize a client-side framework, it's typically an all or nothing investment. You need to work inside of its boundaries and avoid sort of resorting to traditional methods, as this can cause some issues. And this often makes the learning curve steep. And even though the goal of the framework is to make your job a lot easier. And in this class, we'll be learning about the AngularJS client-side framework. So let's talk about AngularJS. AngularJS is a powerful client-side JavaScript-based application design framework. Was developed by Google for building single-page applications. Google released AngularJS in 2010, and it was an immediate success. By 2016, with competing frameworks such as React.js and Vue.js, Google decided to take a completely new approach, and they released Angular version 2 that changes the paradigm and relies on TypeScript as the new language. And TypeScript builds on top of JavaScript by introducing static types and validation that WISE doesn't exist. Due to the added complexity that TypeScript requirement of AngularJS, we will be using requirement of Angular version 2, we will be using AngularJS. However, the concepts we learn apply to other client-side for frameworks. And like I said, AngularJS is the final puzzle piece of the mean stack. It will tie everything that you have learned so far neatly together. And you should start seeing the big picture after this. Okay, so here is AngularJS and what some of the terminology that it has. So we will learn about these ones that I have a star around. So we'll learn about data binding. We'll learn about this thing called scope. We'll learn about this thing called dependency injection, filters, services, expressions, modules, controllers, directives, validators, and that's it. So let's define these. Okay, we'll define them in the next slide. Actually, let's start with it. Okay, so AngularJS is not only a client-side MVVM framework, but it provides other functionality as well, such as form validation, services like Ajax service, support for third-party modules, among other functionality. One of the reasons that make AngularJS and other client-side frameworks have a steep learning curve is the terminology used and what they mean. So let's define some of them. So a module in AngularJS refers to a reusable containers in an application. With modules, you can break your application into sizable chunks that have their own areas of control. In a simple application, you will most likely have a single module. In a more complex application, you can have one more. Okay, these things called directives. In simple terms, directives are AngularJS specific AngularJS specific attributes that apply to HTML tags that specify functionality in an AngularJS application. They are just HTML attributes. Data binding is the concept of a presentation item being bound or connected to a data element. AngularJS offers one-way and two-way data binding. A controller contains the code that handles user events, retrieves data, updates auto, and so on. It's engine in the MVC or MVVM pattern. AngularJS provides a form validation out of the box. Validators use existing input types for automatic form validation. They can also validate based on Angular expressions. Scope. A scope is a auto for a particular view or controller. The scope is object that is connected to a view and is kept always in sync. Okay, so I'm not sure why in AngularJS they call the auto scope, but that's what it's called. And expressions, AngularJS expressions are similar to JavaScript expression with a few minor differences. They can be sprinkled into HTML and automatically evaluated. Filters are formatters for expressions. They can enforce a rule such as to always display the output in all caps despite the input. So things like that. Services are AngularJS objects that bring in functionality into your controllers by means of dependency injection. The scope, for example, is a service that we import into a controller that provides us with access to auto. This concept of a dependency injection is a concept where service objects are injected into our controllers based on the specific name of that of ours. And we'll see an example of this in a bit. All right, where are we? Slide 18. And what about the view? Well, the HTML is the view, or we can state that perhaps we don't want the whole thing to be the view. We can create more than one view in a single HTML page. So where does jQuery? Does somebody have some question? I heard you unmute there. Okay. So where does jQuery fit in all this? It's a complicated answer. You typically want to avoid it because it will interfere with state. So it may be okay in certain times, but there is no 100% sort of guarantee that if you do use it, it won't screw something up. So you want to you do not want to use it in this case. And yeah, so this is because Ajax is asynchronous, and if you include including the scope inside of an asynchronous function has reference back to AngularJS. I know this doesn't make much sense right now, but once we see some of these examples, I think it'll make a lot more sense. Okay, so these are the steps that we need to do to bootstrap an AngularJS application. So we have steps 1 through 5, which we'll go over in a bit. And this is gonna show you an HTML page that has already been bootstrapped. And let's take a look at some of these things here. So these things here, this ng app, ng controller, ng auto, ng model, these are called directives. So when we say the ng controller directive, we are referring to this guy here. So this is sort of the root of our application, this ng app here. So this is going to be the name of our application. Over here, we're calling it my app. And when we do this, we are creating the my app module. Okay. This is our view right over here. And the reason why this is our view is because we are assigning the ng controller to the main tag here, right? So the whole Audi tag is our view. However, we don't have to assign this to just this tag. We can create some HTML, some HTML element, and we can put this ng controller on it, and that becomes the view. So we can have more than one view for HTML page. In this case, we just have one view. So here we are saying that the whole page becomes the view, and the controller for that view is this thing called main controller. So we have the view here, and we have the main controller here. The main controller we define down here. So we define that with first creating our app instance. So we do Angular module, and we ask the name of our app here. So this my app corresponds with my app here. So this creates our app instance, and then we define our main controller. So my app dot controller, main controller, and these are the services. So we have the scope harvest here. And like I said, the scope is our model. Okay, so that's our model. Okay, so we have the MVC here, right? So M, B, and C. Going into the view, which is this part right over here. What we're doing here is this, we have this text input. And what we're saying is that we want this text input to be glued to the model. And we want the field of that to be called name. So what this ends up doing is so when if we refer to scope dot name, the value of scope dot name will be the value of this input. So you know, if you want to see what's in the input, we just refer to scope dot name. If you want to change the input, we do scope dot name equals. Right. So if we change the input, if we change the scope here, the input will also change. So this will also change. Right. So this is glued to that. So that concept is called data binding. And in this case here, we have an expression. So what we can do is we can create these. And for example, here we have this num times 2. And if you take a look at here, we're setting scope.num equals to 10. So when we refer to num here, right, this num is referring to what's in the scope. And this ng model equals name is also referring to something that's in the scope. So here, when we are assigning scope.num to the value of 10, this is going to automatically then take that number 10 and times 2. So we'll get 20 on the page. Let's take a look at the next example. I think it'll make a little bit more sense here. Okay, so here we have the same thing, right? Here we said remember the scope is that object, and we are going to connect or glue this input, right, to the scope, and the field name, right here we're calling it name, is what we define here. So when we say ng auto here equals to name, we are going to define the field name that's going to store the input of this. Right? And here you can see this scope.name can be we can make a change to it in our controller, right down here. And so this is a two-way, right? This is two-way data binding, and the main reason why it's two-way is because we have some form input. We have some form here that this is going to be tied to. So if that form element will change, then this scope object will change, or if you change the scope object, it'll reflect on form element. So this is where you say this is two-way. However, when we put something in an expression, it becomes a single, right? So this is one way. And it's one way because we can't receive any user input here, right? This is just an expression. So here, when we do scope.num equals 10, again, we are adding this thing called num in this scope object, and the value of num is going to be 10. And as soon as the value of num is changed in this object, it's going to automatically evaluate this expression, right? So when we set the value to 10, this is going to be evaluated. So 10 times 2 is going to be 20. If we were to change this value to 20, right, as soon as we change it, this will change as well, right? I think that would make this slide should make a little bit more sense. Here is that again, right? So here we have the input, right? And we have that expression, right? That num times 2. So if we do scope.name equal Amy, then since this input is glued to the scope, once we change the name, it'll automatically change here. Or if we change the name in this input, this will automatically change. And here, right, again, we set the num to 10. This is going to just display that what the result of that in expressions. Right. And in expressions, we can do things like this. So we can put these AngularJS expressions in our HTML. So we can put in something like this, where we have a div here, and we can put some expression right there. We can do calculations, right? So total times 0.0 time, for example. We can even put these for HTML as well. So for example, the image ORL, right? We can put an AngularJS, it's actually here. And when this URL will change, then this image will change, right? Because it's in the image source. And we can also put them in the CSS classes as well. So we can change this some class to some class, and that class is what's going to be that class is what's going to go with that. And then we can also do string concatenations like this: first name plus a space plus last name. Right. Expressions also allow you to apply filters to them. There are a few built-in filters, and AngularJS allows you to define your own as well. Filters are applied using the IP symbol. So we apply filters like this. We have our expression, we have that type symbol, and if we have a filter, we put that there. So we can put one filter there, and we can add more there. And here are some of the ones that are there for you. So if you use RNC here, then it's gonna display this field in this way, right? So it's going to put our sign there, for example, 999. So if this expression was only 999, right, the result of this whole expression will include this, right? So it includes it. We can also filter. We can do 8 there. We have JSON, limit, lowercase, uppercase, number, and we will see these. I believe. All right. AngularJS offers several ways to bind to the view as well, and we saw these in the previous examples, right? We saw this ng model, right, equals to name, right? You can also put these in an expression, an image. Right, so I'm almost done here. Okay, so how do we handle an event? Okay, so the way we handle an event is pretty much the way it was done before. So, for example, if we want to handle that click event, we do ng click. So ng click, and then here we can put a action, and I will show you how we can find this. Right, and we can also do things like this. Other really cool things actually. So, okay, all right, so we'll go over this. All right, that's it. So let's go to examples. Okay, so I have an empty HTML page here. We run it, shouldn't see anything. So let's go over what we would need to do to bring to bootstrap this for Angular.js. So we're going to go to Angular.js, I believe, .org. Okay, so we're going to go to AngularJS.org, and we're going to click on this download Angular.js, and we're going to grab this CDN. So I'm going to highlight that, highlight the CDN, and version 1.8. Yeah. Okay, so we will then go to our application. So here we're going to say this is step 1. Okay, so step 1 is going to be include the Angular.js script file. So it's going to be in a script tag. Source is going to be equal to that URL. Okay, so close the script tag with that. Okay, so that was step 1. Step 2 is we define our application. So that's going to be done in the HTML tag right up here. So let's go ahead and make a comment first. So step 2 is we're going to define the ng app directive that sets the name of our module app. Right, so we're going to do ng app equals, we'll just call that my app. Okay, we're almost done. Step 3 is we got to define the view. So let's go ahead and do that. So this is a step 3. And it is define our view and name of the control for this view. And here we're just going to define the entire page to be the view. Okay, so we'll go to the main body tag, and we will assign ng controller, and we'll say the controller that is going to be used for this view is going to be named main controller. Okay, so step 4, we have to create our app instance. So let's do that. And that's going to be done in the script. So step 4, we are going to bootstrap this application. And we can do that by saying let, we'll create this instance called my app equals to Angular dot module and we name it, and this is the same name that we gave, so my app, the same name that we put up here in this NGF. So we can see my app and any third-party or not necessarily third-party extensions, but any extra functionality that we wanna also include, and that's gonna go in this part here. We're gonna have this be quite to. So we'll just leave that blank. And finally, step 5 is we define our controller. Step 5 is going to be define the controller. And the way we define a controller, we refer to our app dot controller. The controller name here is going to be main controller, right? So this same name that we gave this ng controller up here, this main controller, and then we import things into here, and we do that using this concept of dependency injection. And we want the service, so we are injecting the scope service into our main controller. Okay, and that's it. Okay. So let's hit run, and we really shouldn't see anything yet. Okay, so it's still empty. So here's what we're going to do. Let's come up here to our view. Okay, so right now we're in our view, right? We're in a view because we're in this HTML component that has this ng controller defined on it. So this here is our view. We could have also done this, for example, ng controller, main controller. So this would also work. And then we would have, and then we can remove ng controller from there. Right. So now our view is what's inside of this egg element. Right? So if we go here, this will not be our view. This area up here is not our view either. Our view is just inside of here. Right? And the main controller is what is going to be responsible for this view. Right? So that goes inside of it. Okay. So let's just make the whole thing the view in this example. So we'll just do that, and I'll remove the div. All right, so I'm going to create an input here, and I want the type to be text. And let's do a CSS class of form control. Again, we can still use all the other CSS stuff that we have been doing so far. All right, so we have an input. Let's make sure it looks correct. Okay, it's that one right there. So let's create a div container first. Class container. So we call X, right? Yep. Oh, so that's our input there. All right, so what we want to do now is we want to connect this input, right, to our auto, right? Our auto is this scope. Okay, so you can think of this scope as an object. Okay, so you can think of scope as an object. Like this. Okay. So at this point, we don't have anything else. So this is just an empty object. So what we want to do here is we want to connect, or we want to glue, right, this input to some field in this object. So we want that field name to be, for example, name. Right? We want that field name to just be name. So what we'll do is we'll say we'll go to this input. We'll go ng auto equals to name. So what we just did here, right, was we connected the value of this input, right, the value of this input, what goes in here, right, to this field. So if we put some input in this, then the value of name will change to that input. And at the same time, if we make a change to this name in our controller, then this input will change. Right? So it goes into two directions. So let's go ahead and do this. So we're gonna run, and it'll still be empty. So what we'll do now is we'll go in our main controller and we'll refer to scope dot name equals, let's say, add. So we have assigned the value of name to on, and this input is glued to this name, right? Because we said ng model equals name. So by changing the value of this name, we are changing the value of this input. So if we hit run, we see John in the input. Okay. So I want you to kind of think of how we would do this if we didn't have this here, right? So the way we would change this input in our script file is we would have to do something like document, right, get element by ID. Well, what's the ID of this input? We don't have an ID here, so let's say that we had an ID, and we had that ID of name there. Right? Dot value equals to get, right? So here, I want you to take a look to see we have no DOM stuff going on at all. Right? In our main controller, right? We have no DOM relation at all. We are just changing the value of this object, right? That's all we're doing. By just changing the value of this object, since this object is glued to the input, right? The value is automatically going to change of that input, right? So we do not refer to an element, which is a huge change, right, from what we have been in before. I see a question. Is the essentially pass by reference? You can think of it like that, I guess. Yeah. So here's what's actually going on here when we change the value of name. There is this loop here, and this loop will constantly see what's being changed in this input, And if it sees a change in this input, it knows that this input is connected to this object. So it updates that object with that thing that has changed in that input. And at the same time, this loop is going to constantly take a look at this object. And as soon as something in this object has changed, it'll see that, oh, name has changed. Name is connected to this input. So I need to update this input. So this input will change. And so that's how this is being kept in sync with this input, right? Is this thing going on here? That's going to check to see what has changed in this input or to see what has changed in this object. So then at that point, you can be sure that when you refer to this object, it's always up to date. Right? This object, the scope object, is always up to date. Okay, so far so good. Okay, now let's do an example of an expression. So now let's say we want to display that that came out as well. So what we can do in an AngularJS expression, we can put the name here. Okay, so when we put, for example, name here, just keep in mind that we are again referring to what's in this scope object, right? So this name is the same field in the scope object as we have here, right? So it's going to refer to the exact same thing. So what this will mean is that now that if we change this input, we're going to see that input immediately. And at the same time, if we assign this name in a controller, we are going to see that name immediately on our page, as well as this input being changed as well. Right? Okay, I see a question. So in the way that the prior example had an expression, if we looked at length of name, would the number of letters, yes, it would be changed each time. Yes, correct. Yep. Because they're always kept in ticked. Okay, so let's click on one and let's see what happens. Okay, so we get John in the input and we get John in the DOM. However, remember, there is that glue that's always going to check to see the value of this name. So if we update this name, the expression updates automatically. Right? So if we update the name, since the expression is also going to be something that needs to be in sync, right? So as soon as the name changes, we will see that we have to also update everything that's in an expression. So the name of the expression will also change, which means that if we make a change here, we see the change there. And it's also in the scope. So that means that we can put, for example, H1 element, and we can put this expression inside of it, right? And now it'll be inside of an H1, right? You can also apply filters to this here. So for example, if you want this to be always in uppercase, we can do something like that. So now, if we do John Smith, it'll always be in uppercase. We could do, for example, currency. And if we do that, then if we do 750, get that. And if we have, for example, 7, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, you still get 756. One controller per web page. That is going to depend on your application. We typically have one controller per page, yes. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that we can't have 2 or more. So let's set this back to uppercase. Okay, so we have an idea, right, so far of how this works. So let's do another example. We typically need some code to run after the page has completed, right? And if we were doing this with jQuery, right, it would be the document, I believe, document dot ready, I believe, right? So when the page loads, this event goes off, so we put our there. So in our controllers, we can have it so a code will run when the page is complete. So the way we do that is we go to the HTML element that we have defined the main controller in this case, and we're going to use this elective called ng-init. And we're going to say ng-init equals to, let's say, the function out. So here, what we're saying is we're saying that when the page is completed, we want to call the load inside of our controller. So what's this load going to refer to? Well, this load is going to refer to something again in this scope object. So let's define that. And the way we define it is like this. So we refer to scope dot load equals to an anonymous function, just like that. So code to run when the page loads. Now the code that's here will run as well when the page loads. However, you don't know for sure if once this code runs, the page is complete, right? So to be sure, right, if that's the case, then we want to put it inside of, we want to first create this ng-init and say you wanted to call, in this case, we want to call function called load, and then we define it in the scope. So we do scope.load is equal to anonymous function, and the code is right here. So in reality, we should put the scope.name right inside of here. And it's just a look. But again, this will ensure that, when this happens, the page is already done loading. And we can also convert this to an arrow function as well if we want. So we can do that. And which is great. Okay. So let's do another example here. Let's go put another input and the type of text, class of foreign control. This time we'll set the ng model to cost. Model to cost. And then what we'll do is let's create an H3 element. And let's say subtotal. We'll do an angular expression. There is expression here. And we will do cost. For example, if you want to if you want to rate a 10% of tax on this, that'll be 1 times, I mean, cost times 1 times 1.1, right? And we want to display this as currency. So let's run it. So if we put 10, we will get the left. If we put 5, we'll get 550. If we put 50, we will get 605. So that there will work. How about if we want to not display the subtotal if this is empty? So we want to hide. We want to hide this if we don't have anything in the input. So let's see how we would do that. So all that is inside of this H3 element. And what we're going to do in this H3 element is we're going to add another AngularJS directive called ng-show. And in this ng-show, we can put any truthy, falsy value we want. So inside of this ng-show, we can put truthy, falsy. Yeah. So if we put the number 1, right, that's going to be considered a truthy value. So it's going to show this H2. If we put the number 0, right, then it's going to hide this H2. So let's try that out. Let's put the number 1 and it does show. Put the number 0. It's gone. Okay. So we can also put cost inside of the ng-show. So if we put cost in here, what's going to happen is if this input is an empty string, then cost is going to be an empty string. So it's going to hide this H3. But as soon as we put something in here, right, then the cost won't be an empty string anymore. So this ng-show is going to be a true value, and this H3 is going to show. All right, so let's take a look at that. All right, so we don't see it now, but as soon as we put the number 5, now the whole thing appears. If we remove it, the whole thing is gone. Right, so it's a brand new way to sort of think about it, right? I mean, it'll take some time before you kind of get the idea here. So don't feel too odd that you kind of don't know what's going on here, because you have to sort of think of it as it isn't just you here anymore, right? You have this machine that's there, and what you're doing is you're telling this thing, if this happens, then do this. If that happens, do that. And the machine is going to handle that there, right? So you have to sort of tell it what you want it to do. And again, we have all this stuff going on, right, with 0 code. We don't have any code at all, right, in our script file. Well, we have code as far as this AngularJS app and creating a controller, but as far as setting this up total, setting it up to show 555, doing this times 1.1, all that is going on in the view. so let's do another example of this NG show. So let's create an image. Here's what I'll do. Actually, I need to create a folder here. Let's just put this emoji in here. So I have this PNG file here, happy emoji.png. So if we select this, we see this happy emoji. Okay, so we want to first display it. So let's do that. So image source equals to happy emoji.png. That's it. So we do that. And we run it. What did I do here? Accidentally. Accidentally move this to. We can do that. And I need a. Where's the rep view? Let me try refreshing this web page. I'll get it back. Yeah, I don't have my web view anymore. Where did it go? Web view is gone. Okay. Here's what we do. Like, maybe open it up in a new tab anymore. I'm going to do this again. Settings. This is layout. Okay, there we go. We got to that. Okay, so we added this emoji image to somewhere over here. We added it right over here. Right, so it's image source at the emoji. So what we want to do now is we want this happy emoji to show only if we put happy here. If we don't put happy here, then we don't want this to show at all. So here's what we can do. We'll go to this image here. We'll add again the ng show. And we'll say when the name is equal to the string happy. Okay. So here, remember, what's going to happen here is if the value inside of this ng show is true, right, then it will show the image. If it isn't true, then it won't show the image, right? So here we're saying that if this thing here is true, which means that if this name field in the scope object, which is part of this input, if that name is equal to the string happy, then this will evaluate to true, and this image will show. Okay, so let's run it, and we shouldn't see the image. So let's begin to type happy. So HAPPY, and as soon as we do that, it'll show, right? And if we remove the Y, it's gone. Strange, right? Okay. Let's see how we handle events. So we'll create a button here. button, primary. Okay, and we want the button to say, just say hello. Okay, so if we want to have, if we want to create an event for this, we find it in the ng click. Ng click equals. Okay. So let's say what we want to do is we want to call the function say hello. Okay. So we're going to put in this ng click say hello, just like that. Oh, I see something in the chat. Michael, can you repeat the reasoning why? The reasoning for what, Michael? The happy emoji showing typing sharp. Yes, I can go ahead and do that again. Okay, so why is it showing the image when we type that? So we do this again. Okay. So when we load the page, right, all this is going to be evaluated. All this stuff here. So when this image is evaluated at this current point, right, where the input is on, when this input is evaluated, we're going to take a look at what's inside of this ng show, because this ng show is going to determine if this image is shown or not. And the value of this is going to depend on that. And the value can be either true or false value, or a true false value. Okay, so, so when we put, for example, the number 1 inside of the string, well, that was considered a truthy value, right? So if the value of ng show is some truthy value, then the image is going to show. So instead of putting the number 1 here, what we're doing is we're saying, take the value of the scope object's name field and compare it to the string of happy. So the value of the name field in the scope object is connected, right, to this input. So as this input changes, so let's say we put H like that. What's going to do is it's going to say, does H equal happy? No, right? So this is not going to be shown. Then we'll type A, right? Then it'll, again, name will change. So this will be reevaluated. Each time there's a change, this is reevaluated. So now it's going to compare, does HA equal to happy? And no. Right? Again, the image is not going to be shown. So on and so forth, right? PPY, as soon as we have happy, then we have, does happy, right, equal to the string happy? And at this point, this is true, right? So as soon as this is true, ng show is going to now show this image. So that's why we see the image. Type it. Do that. Sure. Okay. All right. So we were going and talking about input. Talking about the say hello button. All right. So now how we handle an event. So when we select the Say Hello button, we do that by calling the function that we want inside of the ng click. So ng click, we're saying when a click occurs, call the Say Hello function that is defined in the scope. Again, whatever we put inside of these ng clicks, they are all going to refer to this scope object. Right, so this ng model equal name, we are referring to the scope, the name field in the scope object. When we do ng model cost, we are referring to the cost field in the scope object. Okay, this ng show equals to cost. Again, we are referring to the cost field in the scope object. We are referring to the cost field in the scope object. Same thing with here, ng click equals Say Hello. We are referring to the Say Hello function in the scope object. So what we need to do is we need to define a Say Hello function in the scope object. So we're going to go down here and we're going to say scope.sayHello equals to an anonymous hello function. And we can do like an alert. And we get it here. Again, let's kind of take a look at what's going on in our controller. Right? We have no get element by ID, add event listener, click, all that stuff, right? All we are doing in the controller, right, is we are referring to the scope object. Right? And in our view, what we're doing is we're saying how this object is connected to the UI elements. And when we change this object, those UI elements are going to reflect. And the other way around, if we change the UI, some parts of the UI elements, the object is going to change. Right? Okay. Let's do this now. We can now read the value of this input just by referring to, again, scope.name. Okay? So if we do hello space what's in this input, right, we are going to refer to scope.name. Right? Because again, this is going to always be in sync, right? This name is always going to be in sync with what's in this input. Right? So now if we have John here, we'll get hello John. Right? If we change this to happy, the emoji is displayed. I got happy. But again, you see here, we are not referring to that we document get element by ID, that value, all that stuff. Right? All we're doing is we're referring to the scope object. And so it's a new way to think about our UI as a whole, because we're so used to thinking that in a script, we have to interact with the view. We have to update the view. We have to add things in the DOM. Right? We have to remove things from the DOM. Right? And what we're seeing here is we're seeing that all that is now handled by the client framework. And now all we're doing is we are going to tell the client framework how this object is connected to the UI elements, so that when we change this object, those UI elements reflect. Right? Okay. We have this ng model is set to cost. So let's also change the cost here. So scope.cost, let's set that to 250. So now when the page loads, we will get 250 displayed in this input. I see another question. It's like code is an instruction manual. Yes, for the server side. The client side, I mean, set it and forget it kind of thing. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yes, that's perfect. That's sort of a really good way to see it. Okay, so let's do another example here. So let's say we want to display an image once we put a URL in that in a field. So we're going to have another input. Type our text in the class, and we want the ng model here to be set to image URL. Okay. And then we're going to take that image URL and we're going to display it in an image. And we're going to set the source of that image, and we're going to put an AngularJS expression right in the source of that image. And the AngularJS expression is going to just be the raw value of the image URL. Okay. So we're going to take the image URL that's going to be in this input, and we're going to send it over to the source of this image, which is going to change that image to be displayed. Right? Okay. So let's run this, and we shouldn't get anything here. So let's go to pixabay.com. And then we'll get an image here. We'll get an image URL, that is. And as soon as we now put this image input, we'll see the image. Again, no code at all, right? We didn't do a single line of code here, right? We just took the value, right, that's in this input, and we glued it to the scope object under the field name image URL. And then we are using that image URL in the image tag in the source attribute. Image URL. Okay. I'm going to stop here. However, I want to do one more thing, and that is we want these controllers to not be in the root of our application in this main index.html. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new folder, and the folder is going to be controllers. And in the controllers folder, we're going to create a file called main controller.js. And the main controller is going to have this step 5. So I'm going to remove it from there and place it here. So that's going to be our main controller is inside of this main controller.js file. And then I just need to make sure to refer to that main controller from here. Right? So we're going to make a HTML comment here. And this will be our controllers. Right? And this is going to be a script reference, source of controllers, main controller.js. And it will still work. Right? So again, the idea here is that we don't want all of our controllers to be in one place. We want them each be in its own strip file. And what we're going to learn next week is we will also take out these views from this main file. So here, what we're doing is we're setting the whole SPA. You can think of this main index.html as being as the sort of the root page. What we're going to learn next week is how to inject views. Okay, so what that's going to work, how that's going to work is we're going to find something special inside here, and when we want to change to a new view, it's going to automatically take a view file and inject it in that part of the page. And then we're going to have a controller also defined for that view. So we'll have a views folder as well. So I'll just go ahead and create that folder right now, and we will see it next week. So do that, views. Okay, so we'll have our views here, our controllers here. So if we want to again go to a specific view, we'll go under that view and we'll see all the UI components for that view there. All right, so we'll do that next week. And that's it. Are there any questions? Anything you want me to go over again? Something that's not clear. Fix these. Sure. See a question in the chat. Okay, question is if we wanted to add like alternative text or something, can we still add it in the attribute? Yes, you can, of course. Yeah. So that's the part that's really neat about it, is that you could use all the HTML, CSS that you have been in the past, and it's not gonna interfere. So you could do it alt tab, for example, here. Dynamic, for example, image, and that alt type is still work. However, it works even in a more correct way, because look at this. So we don't have an image, but we are still seeing the alt tag here. And if we do put an image, then I'm assuming that alt tag will go away. I believe that's by design. So let's see here. Yeah, so if we do put an image, that alt tag will go away, but if we go over it with our mouse, we should still see the alt tag, I believe. Just a little inspect. Alt tab, yeah, so it is still left. But what's cool about it is if you actually remove it, it'll actually show you with alt this. Yeah. Sure, no problem. Oh, something I forgot to go over, I know we're a little bit past, is I wanted to actually show you what's going on here. So when we inspect this page, we will actually see the changes as it's actually going on. So here you could see that we have John in the H1, right? Now watch, if I start making a change, keep track of what's going on in here, in this part here. Right? So see that? So the DOM is actually being changed. The DOM is actually being changed as I make the change to this input. We can actually see that happen. Right? And let's see what's going on with this. If you know how we type copy, this image is going to be displayed. So first, let's not have the image displayed. And here's what we get. We get this image here that has a class of ng hide, right? So what it's doing is it's adding and removing a class that's going to determine if this image is displayed or not. So if we take a look at what this ng hide class is, we will see that the ng hide class will be display null. So this is that CSS class that's being applied to this when this is not true, right? But as soon as we put copy, the class goes away. See, this image class is now empty, right? So that's how it's being controlled, how this image is either going to be displayed or not, is all based on this CSS class. All right, any other questions? Your lab assignment for the week is very similar to what I just did here in class. We'll go out with this part. Should be pretty straightforward. So part 0 is to do all that stuff. We're going to add the script file and the ng app, create the app instance, create the main controller, create the view. That's going to be part 0 here. Part 1 is all it says is when you type your name should be displayed in this view. Like pretty straightforward at this point. Part 2 is what we just did, right? If you put this image URL here, this image is going to display that image. Yeah, that image based on that URL. Part 3 is really similar to that happy or sad that I did, but here instead, if you type the word happy, then the happy emoji should display, which is this one here. And if we type the word add, then the add emoji should display. That part 4 just takes two numbers and you get you'll get a sum. So two should result in 4. Actually, let me go over this because this is might be a little confusing. And I know students usually have questions about that. So the idea here, let's do this. Let's put all the way down here. We'll do that. Actually, you'll get that here for it. Actually, don't even need to do that much on it. So input, type text. So we're going to set this ng model to num1. Let's say this is the first number there, and we're going to do another input of num2. Right, and we want to display the sum. So if we try to do num1 plus num2, right, this is going to do a string concatenation, right? Because num1 is going to come from this input, and if we read the input, it's going to be a string. Right, so this is just going to concatenate, and we will see that, right? 5 and 5 is going to show 55. So how do we convert this, right, to that value? Well, we could do it 2 ways. We could do it 3 ways. I'll actually show you 3 ways to do it. Unfortunately, you cannot use parse int at this time like that. that won't work. The reason why it won't work is because you don't have access to the window object in this expression. Okay. So you could do that in the script file here, right? But you can't put it in an expression because you don't have access to that main window object. Right? It's actually window dot parse int. Right? So that won't work. There is a way to get that to work, which I will show you. That will be the third way to do it. But the way you could do it real fast is just put a us sign right in front of it, just like that. So by putting a sign like that, it's going to attempt to convert it into a actual number. So now it should actually give you the correct result. That's a way you could do it. You could also do something like num times 1 plus num2 times 1. Again, when you do this times 1, it's going to attempt to convert this from a string to the number, right? So that's going to also work. And now I'm going to show you how you can get the window object in your expression as well, which is really cool. So remember, whatever we assign to scope, we can access and review. So what we can do is we can do this. We can say scope dot window equals to window. So what we're doing is we're assigning the main window object to a field in our scope object. So now we can access the window object in the view. So you can do that, or you could do something like this as well. You could do scope dot parse int equals to window dot parse int. So here, what you're doing is you're assigning the parse int function of the window to parse int of your scope. So now you could do parse int in your view. But let's stick with this. So I assign the entire window object to my scope. So, and now that I did that, I can actually refer to window dot int. Parse int, window dot parse int. And this should also give you the correct answer. All right, I will leave this as this version. All right, any questions? I just realized this is how Lucid chart updates automatically. Lucid chart, I've heard of it. I just don't remember. I just don't know what technology they use, but it can be. It can be. Yep. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining. Please let me know if you do have any questions, and we will see you next week, Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marty. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a great week. We'll see you.